Namaste, everyone. I wanted to jump on this video and talk to you today about grief and intuition. My name is Ariela Halevi, and I think in the experience that I've had with clients and also my personal grief, that using your intuition and connecting to the divine and angels and your guides, especially your grief guides, are a holy way to get through grief. Grief is so experiential and it is so personal to everyone. But I wanted to jump on here to talk about just a little bit about my story of grief and how I used the connection of my intuition to help me get through such a difficult period. So I lost my mom about 3 years ago to cancer. She was sick for about 6 or 7 years. And the first thing I thought of when I lost my mom and when I was going through the stages of losing my mom, even before she passed, was I'm going to be all alone in the world. And I have kids and I have a husband and I have a great family, but that mother wound, that person that is so close to you is so hard to lose, whether it is your spouse or your child or your parents. It is so hard to lose somebody that is close to you. And so in my world and in my body, I had decided that I was alone. And in those initial stages when she first passed away, that was what was running through my mind and my anxiety and my heart, is that I was alone in the world, and how was I going to function without a mother? There's a term called the mother wound. And part of that is to heal the mother wound, is to heal the wounds from passed down from your mother, but also to experience that deep loss of losing a mother or somebody close to you, is that it's almost like the original wound. It's that wounding that doesn't quite heal. I don't know really if any wound quite heals, but I want to talk to you about how I found myself on my knees in such deep grief. And instead of feeling alone, I opened to the divine. And so one of the ways that I did it was that, especially in the first days and months of grief, we need to give ourselves permission to heal. And part of that is giving ourselves permission to cry and grieve when it arises. There are going to be times in those initial, it could be the first year, it could be the first 6 months or the first 3 months, depending on your grief and your body, that grief is going to arise out of nowhere. And if we stuff it down, then we are preventing ourselves from truly feeling and healing from such a difficult loss. So the first thing that I did was that I gave myself full permission, as long as, and when appropriate, to completely cry. And when I share this story of my grief, I remember that for whatever reason, when I was in the car driving by myself, that is when my grief was allowed to come up. So if you have a very busy life, you're going to find in those moments of quiet, maybe it's before you go to bed or when you first wake up or when you're in the car driving by yourself, that all those emotions rise to the surface. And so I would pull over on the side of the road and I would just allow myself to cry, because one way to heal and connect to your intuition and really to open to what this healing and this grieving means to you is give yourself permission to cry, because honestly, it is what your loved one wants you to do. Your loved one doesn't want you to move forward and move on in a way that hurts you or hurts the memory. And so there are so many stages of grief, right? You've probably heard all of them. The stages of grief are wonderful for emotional healing. So I think if you move through, we move in and out in and out of the stages of grief. There is no one line. It's not linear. Grief is all over the map, and that is why it's so scary. Because for those of us that are used to things going one way, grief takes a hold of our life and says, let's throw your life upside down. And whatever works and whatever arises, we're going to feel and we're going to experience. It's really a lesson in learning to let go of control. But one thing that I think is missing in the stages of grief is the ability to look up. The ability to look up. Because grief causes us to look down. It causes us to have blinders on so that we can see nothing but our loss. in some ways it's so intense that we don't want to move forward. We don't want to move out of this grief because we're afraid that it's going to break the bond with our loved one. If I move forward and I stop grieving, or I allow myself some hint of joy, then I'm not honoring my loved one. And it's simply not true. And so one way that I got into and through and around my grief is to look up instead of look forward with blinders on. And one way I did that was to hone in on my intuition. And we're going to talk about what is intuition and how to tap into an intuition. But first I want to talk about this, that when you're on your knees, there is only one way to look. It is to look up. Whether your belief, it doesn't matter what your belief is. There are beings, divine beings out there that are ready and willing to help us if we would only open to them. So I believe that part of healing and part of these stages of grief is to remember that the divine and your angels and guides are here for you no matter what. In fact, and we're going to get to this, what I have found, and in my practice when I work with people who are grieving, is that there's extra angels and extra guides there to guide you through your grief process that you've never had before. And so your job is to get quiet enough to listen. Before we talk about how to do that, let's talk about this term. It's a new term in the grief world called continuing bonds. Continuing bonds is exactly what it means. That life doesn't end when you take your last breath. Your bond with your loved one does not end when they take their last breaths. So continuing bond is asking this question first and foremost. What does my loved one want me to do with my one precious life? I've heard from a lot of people that they can't go on, that they don't want to live. And that is a normal way to be. That is a normal feeling. I would just want to say that that's so normal. We all feel that way. But if you are feeling that every single day, number one, it would be helpful to get help. And number two, the continuing bond message is that I guarantee you, your loved one wants you to do one or two major things with your one precious life. The relationship doesn't end, and your loved one is looking down upon you. There is a thin veil between us and our loved ones. And those of us that are able to tap in and feel the presence of our loved ones know that the veil is very thin. Sometimes it feels thick, and sometimes it feels very thin, and we receive those messages from our loved ones. But they don't want you to sink. They don't want you to look at life with blinders on. They want you to open to your soul. They want you to open to why you're here. Yes, you loved them. Yes, we miss them. But they are not far. They are in different form, and it still hurts. But continuing bonds is a new way to see life. When we think about a continuing bond, we can use our guidance and our intuition to start continuing the relationship. I remember with my mom, when she left this earth, she was scared and she couldn't talk about the fact that she was dying. So I was left with this feeling of incompleteness. Like, why couldn't I talk about dying with my mom? We all knew she was dying, but she just couldn't talk about it. And there is no judgment, because we are all going to be the way we are through death. And what I longed for was a conversation with her. I wanted to continue the conversation. I didn't want it to end. I wanted it to change. I wanted more. And I didn't want to feel like I was jilted, like, oh my gosh, now she died and I don't have this relationship with her anymore. And the opposite was true. I managed after her death to heal our relationship more than in life. We have a strong continuing bond now more than ever before. And so I just want to give this idea to you that when you open to this idea of continuing bonds, your relationship can now heal. And that's really the next stage, is using your intuition so that you can continue this bond with your loved one and also heal from unspoken, unhealed issues when your loved one is alive. It's very common to only remember the good things. And we will do that for a lot of the rest of our lives. Fortunately, the negative stuff fades and we remember the positive stuff. But the invitation is to also heal the things that haven't been healed, so that your generations past you, in future generations, can be free of the issues that you have between that person that passed away. So, a continuing bond allows you to continue the healing process. In the work that we do at Soul Centered, we believe that the relationship does not die. The relationship continues in a different way. And so we work on continuing to remember the love, to remember the beauty, and also remember the hurt and the wounds, so that you can be free of the wounds, so that you and your loved one can be free of the wounds. And that takes me ultimately to intuition. If you're going to tell me, and if you're somebody that says to me, I don't have intuition, I don't believe in it, I can't do it, I don't know what to do, I'm going to invite you to sit still. It is as simple and as hard as that. We all have intuition. We just need to build it like you build a muscle in the gym. You don't go into the gym for the first time and become a bodybuilder. You have to use the muscle. And so one way to use it is to get quiet enough to hear the still small voice within you and ask for help. Our guides, our angels, and the divine, they are divine beings on the other side. They need permission to come into this earthly being, this earthly world, and to help us. And so one of the ways that I know to connect with them is to sit quietly and ask for help. It's as simple as that. Or go for a walk and get quiet and ask for help. Ask your loved one to show you signs and messages from beyond. Ask your guides to enhance their help so that you know that you're not alone. Ultimately, when my mother died, I feel, and this may sound cliche, but it is so true, I feel like I fell into the arms of the Divine Mother because I didn't have a mother anymore on this earth. And I needed something to hold me. And yes, my friends and my family held me, but there was nothing like falling into the hands of the divine relationship that I cultivated because my mom passed. And so my hope for you is that you can ask your angels and guides and the divine to help you. They want to heal with you. They want to cry with you. They want to be with you and help you through everything in this lifetime. And they want you to know that your loved one is okay. I think that is the biggest thing, is that when we pass, people don't want to pass often because they're afraid of leaving their loved ones, and they're afraid that their loved ones are not going to be okay. And then when a loved one passes, we are worried that they're not going to be okay, especially with suicides and accidents and trauma. We are worried. And so in the work that I do with people, I often see that they are loved on the other side, that they are healing on the other side, and that they want you to do the same. And so just in conclusion, continuing bonds means that you get to continue this relationship, that using your intuition and asking for help allows you to open to a different form of relationship. Yes, we're going to still feel grief. Yes, we're going to still miss that physicality, that physical form. But this is an invitation to see things not as they are on earth, but to see things from your divine mind, from your intuitive mind. We all have that ability. And so my hope and prayer for all of us is that we can move through those stages of grief with love and intuition and healing and feeling. Namaste.